Salam. Welcome to Muslim Viewpoint, a new podcast series powered by American Muslim Today, a groundbreaking non-profit digital newspaper which champions civic engagement. AMT informs and empowers the diverse voices of almost 30 million Muslims here in the US and other Western countries. I'm Rifat Malik. I'm AMT's editor-in-chief, and today we have an interview with Eman Abdelhadi, an assistant professor of religion and gender at the University of Chicago. Now, she's announced that she will not vote for Joe Biden in the 2024 elections, mainly due to his support for the Israeli military in the current conflict in the Middle East. Abdelhadi's studies focus on Muslims in American society as a religious minority and how this influences the larger culture and politics. She spoke to our reporter, Maya Gala.
Yeah, I think like many Muslim Americans, I've been extremely disappointed with the Biden administration's handling of this crisis in Gaza and what I would call a genocide of Gazans. So like many Muslim Americans, I've been a registered Democrat for as long as I've been a voter. For me, Biden was not my first choice in the primaries. I supported Bernie Sanders and canvassed for him. But once Biden won the primaries, I felt very clear that, I wanted to support the Democratic candidate, that it was important to choose, the lesser of two evils, right? So even though I didn't, agree with everything that Biden stood for, I agreed with some things, disagreed with others, felt that he wasn't left-wing enough. I still, wanted to see him in the White House instead of Trump. And I think what we've seen in the last 103 days is that the difference, especially when it comes to Arab and Muslim lives, is actually negligible. So I can't imagine anything worse than what's happened in the last 103 days. More importantly, Biden and his party have made it very clear that they don't care about my vote. They don't care about Muslim votes. They don't care about Arab votes. They don't care about the fact that we have mobilized for them for 2 decades. They think that they have us regardless of what they do. And if committing genocide, which to me is the most heinous crime humans can commit, is not enough for them to lose our votes, then the message is there's nothing they could do to lose our votes.
Right. And, we still have about a year-ish, 9 months at this point, I guess, until the election day. So what do you kind of hope to see comes out of the Democratic Party or either party? Because right now it's looking like Biden might be the front runner for the Democratic Party.
I would really hope that the party chooses a different candidate to run. I mean, I think Biden has shown that he's not able to command favorability among voters. He's not able to, he's going against the overwhelming majority of Democratic voters who want a ceasefire. He doesn't represent us. He doesn't represent the party. I think the party needs to go in a different direction if it has any hope in November.
Yeah, and then so currently, there are things that the Biden administration could be doing. Many people have asked Biden for a ceasefire. So what do you think they should be doing?
Yeah, they should be trying to end this conflict as soon as possible instead of helping Israel expand it or giving Israel a sort of blank check of both economic and moral support, which is what they've been doing. There should be an immediate ceasefire. There should be a recall of all sort of financial support to Israel. This Israeli regime has made it very clear that they have no respect for human rights, that they have no intention to uphold any standard of international law or basic civility. And so the US should withdraw every single penny of support that it currently gives Israel. And the Biden administration has the power to do that. And the Biden administration should be trying to encourage peace in the region instead of starting its own strikes. It should not be striking Yemen. It should be trying to avoid an escalation of this war rather than an expansion of it.
And then what do you think voters should be advocating for here? You know, because as Americans, we have a hand in it because our tax dollars are going towards those weapons. Yeah, what can voters do?
I think voters need to put enormous pressure on the Democratic Party and all elected officials in general. I think it should be made very clear that this is a make it or break it issue, that this is something that people are willing to withdraw their votes over and withdraw their support over, that this is an unforgivable thing to support. And so I think there should be enormous pressure. I think that there has been enormous pressure on the local side, on the national side, on the state level. I think we also have to be asking ourselves in community organizing, what does it mean that we're putting on such enormous pressure and yet it doesn't seem to be having the effect that we want? What does it mean that the majority of the American public wants one thing, but the majority of our elected officials want a different thing? I think this issue is highlighting the limits of our democracy, is highlighting the ways in which we live in a system that we don't have as much control over as we should, that doesn't actually always represent our interests and our desires as taxpayers and as citizens. So we should also be asking ourselves that question.
And then if the Biden administration can't pull it together, and they are still the front runner by November, who will you be voting for and why?
I will be voting on the presidential ticket. I'll be voting third party. And on the local level and the state level, it will depend on the individual candidates and their stances. I'm not going to vote for any pro-genocide candidates. I'm not going to vote for a candidate that doesn't have the courage, the moral courage to stand up against this genocide that we're all literally paying for. And so it'll be research on that side. I'm afraid that I think a lot of people, we know from research that a lot of people don't show up to the national election if they're not interested in either of the two major party candidates. So my fear is that a lot of people simply won't show up to vote. I plan on still showing up to vote, but I will not be voting. I will not be voting for Joe Biden, and I will not be voting for any candidate that has staked their political career on this genocide.
Yeah. And then, so you personally, you have done a lot of research in your career on what you call subcultures and how they affect a larger society. So can you kind of maybe speak about, I know you've written a book, so maybe that topic and how it relates to this situation, because it is kind of a subculture of religion there affecting the political issue.
Well, my work is primarily on Muslim Americans. My research is on Muslim Americans, including both sort of including their political leanings and their sort of identities. And I know that, for Muslim Americans, I think what we're seeing is a huge kind of shift in a crossroads where people are realizing that having a seat at the table at the Democratic Party has not been enough, or at least has not been structured in such a way that our votes are being taken seriously. And so I think that what we're seeing is a huge kind of shift in the community's effort. In one ways, we're more active than we've ever been. I think everyone has been pooling all of their resources. Every Muslim organization I know has been working in some way or another to try to stop this genocide, to try to get a ceasefire together. But I think we're also really facing the limits of what we can do electorally, as well as the limits of our sort of comfortable place within the progressive coalition, or what once felt like a comfortable place. And I think we're not the only ones, so I think it's hard to know exactly what's going to happen. I think a lot of people are going to be very disillusioned and deactivated by this, at least on the electoral level. But I think people are also galvanized in their Muslim identities. So we know that when whatever identity group you're in faces some kind of threat or some kind of attack, usually people become kind of come closer together and also kind of double down on that identity. Especially, so with Muslims, we've seen that in 9/11, we saw that around the Trump campaign. We've seen that at various moments that there have been spikes in Islamophobia. People kind of relate to their Muslim identity more strongly following those events. And I think for a lot of people, this is a huge, this is a sort of defining moment. And we don't know yet where the chips are going to fall, because it's still ongoing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Eman. I don't have any further questions unless you would just like to add anything about the situation or your position as a constituent.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I just really want to emphasize is that the votes, every community most communities are wooed for their votes, right? And I think that the Democratic Party has assumed that people of color, certain communities, have nowhere else to run, and therefore they will always have them, and they can take those votes for granted. And we're going to see how that works out for them in November. I suspect they should not be as confident as they currently are.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this week. From me and Maya, be sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at American Muslim Today. And if you'd like to read more about this story and access more digital content, feel free to check out our website, AmericanMuslimToday.com. We'll see you next week on Muslim Viewpoint.